I took her to dinner at a five-star restaurant for our anniversary, and she complained the entire time about the service. She said, "I could have done better with my ex, but this will do for now." I smiled, left a tip, and walked out. She's been texting me nonstop, but I haven't replied because I'm a 29-year-old guy, and I've always been the type to believe in doing things properly when it comes to relationships. You know, thoughtful gestures, remembering little things, being there when it matters. I'm not flashy, I don't post sappy paragraphs online, but I put in the effort where it counts. So when our second anniversary came around, I really wanted to do something special for Dana. Dana and I had been together for just over 2 years. She's 27, works in marketing for a startup, and she's probably the most outwardly confident person I've ever met. The kind of girl who walks into a room and immediately commands attention, not by being loud, just by being her. She has that put-together, Pinterest board life vibe. Always dressed like she just stepped off a photo shoot, always knowing exactly what to say to make people listen. I admired that, at least at first. We met through a friend of mine, Jules, at a gallery opening. I was the awkward guy standing near the snack table, and she walked right up to me and said, "You look like you hate everything in this room." She wasn't wrong, and I think I laughed harder than I should have. That was Dana in a nutshell, sharp, unfiltered, and undeniably magnetic. Things were good at the start. Or maybe they just felt good because I wanted them to be. There were signs, little things, but I brushed them off like most people do when they're wrapped up in someone. The first time she met my sister, for example, she complimented her outfit, then immediately followed it up with, "You're so brave for wearing horizontal stripes." That takes confidence. I remember thinking it was a weird comment, but Dana just smiled like she'd said something kind. My sister didn't say much, but she definitely remembered it. Then there was her way of joking about my work. I'm a freelance UX designer, mostly for health and education platforms. I work from home, set my own hours, and do pretty well for myself. But Dana liked to call it playing around on my laptop. Anytime someone asked what I did, she'd either oversimplify it to something that sounded like a high school internship or just say, "He's a tech guy, it's complicated." But I let it slide. Again and again. I figured she's just not good at expressing herself. Maybe she didn't realize how it came across. Her family didn't help. Her mom, Letitia, is the kind of woman who smiles while asking you invasive questions. At our first dinner together, she leaned over the table and asked if I had a 5-year plan. Not in a curious way, in a tone that said she'd already decided the answer was no. Her dad was quieter, but not in a comforting way. More like he'd mentally checked out years ago and was just waiting for someone to give him permission to leave the table. Her brother, Max, Max barely looked up from his phone. The whole evening felt like a job interview I wasn't qualified for. Dana didn't defend me that night, or any night after when they made those subtle digs. But she brushed my frustration aside later with something like, "They're just trying to get to know you." My mom's a little intense. And somehow, every time I walked away from one of those interactions, I ended up feeling like I was the problem for not fitting in. Still, I stayed. I told myself that if I just gave it more time, if I showed them I was serious, it would get better. I mean, 2 years is a long time, right? Long enough that you want to believe it means something. Which brings us to the night everything cracked. Our second anniversary was coming up, and I wanted to plan something she'd really appreciate. Dana has always had expensive taste, designer shoes, fine wine, boutique everything. She's not shy about it either. She follows all these luxury lifestyle influencers and critiques restaurants like she's a Michelin judge. So I figured, if there was ever a time to go all out, this was it. I made a reservation at this high-end French place she mentioned once in passing, Le Fleur. It's the kind of restaurant that doesn't list prices on the menu, just delicate dish names written in cursive. Getting a reservation wasn't easy, and paying for it meant juggling my client load and picking up extra projects for a few weeks. But I wanted her to feel celebrated. I even had the hostess arrange for her favorite flowers, white orchids, to be waiting at the table. She showed up 25 minutes late. No text, no call. Just breezed in, looked around like the ambience personally disappointed her, and sat down with a sigh. Not a hello, not a you look nice, just, ugh, I thought this place would be brighter. It looks smaller in real life. I bit the inside of my cheek, kept a smile on my face, and handed her the menu. She barely glanced at it before saying, "Tell me you didn't get us a tasting menu. I'm not in the mood for rabbit food." We were barely 5 minutes into the evening, and I already knew something was off. But I didn't know how far off things were going to get. I tried not to let her attitude ruin the night. I really did. She was wearing this dark green dress I'd never seen before, probably new, and her hair was done in those soft waves she usually saved for parties or weddings. She looked stunning, but the way she was acting, it was like she had somewhere better to be. The server came by to greet us, this soft-spoken guy with a nervous smile. He introduced himself as Luca and asked if we wanted still or sparkling water. I said still. Dana didn't even look at him. She was too busy scrolling through her phone. I heard the camera shutter go off and glanced over to see her snapping a photo of the table setting. She finally spoke. "If the food's good, maybe I'll post it. Depends how photogenic it is." Luca nodded politely and left to get the water. I wanted to ask her what was going on, if something had happened, if she was okay, but I already knew how that would go. Dana didn't like being questioned when she was in a mood. She'd either make a joke about me being overly sensitive, or she'd just brush it off with, "I'm fine. Don't make it a thing." So instead, I said, "You look beautiful tonight." She smiled for the first time all evening. I know. I waited, hoping she'd follow it up with a thank you, or even just a smile that reached her eyes. But nothing came. She looked back at her phone. The glow of the screen lit up her face in this cold, disconnected way. I sat there quietly, trying to remember why I thought this dinner would go differently. The appetizers arrived, some delicate arrangement of tuna tartare with shaved fennel and some kind of citrus foam. I actually liked it, but Dana stared at hers like it had personally offended her. She poked at it with her fork. "This is it? I've seen better presentation on airplane food." I didn't say anything. I just took another bite. The couple sitting at the table beside us gave her a quick glance, and she noticed. Dana leaned closer to me and said under her breath, "What? I'm not going to pretend this is amazing just because it costs a fortune. If I wanted overpriced snacks, I'd go back to that sushi place you took me to last month. At least their lighting was decent." I blinked, still chewing. I hadn't realized she didn't like that place. She hadn't said anything at the time. She'd even complimented the dessert and posted it on her story with one of those date night goals captions. Now it felt like she'd just been storing all these little complaints and waiting for the right moment to drop them. Luca came back to clear our plates and ask how everything was. Dana gave him a tight smile and said, "Fine. But do you guys season anything back there, or is salt extra?" He blinked, clearly unsure how to respond. I jumped in, trying to soften it. "It's been good so far. Thank you." Luca nodded, a little awkwardly, and took the plates. As he walked away, Dana rolled her eyes. "I don't get why people act like these places are above criticism. Just because they put food on a weird-shaped plate doesn't make it art." I stared at her for a second. "I thought you liked Le Fleur." She shrugged. "I liked the idea of it. I didn't know it would be this performative." There it was again. That need to make everything sound beneath her. The food. The service. Me, probably. Still, I kept my tone neutral. "Well, I thought you'd enjoy it. You mentioned it once, and I figured." She cut me off. "Yeah, I remember. I was probably talking about someone else's post. You know Adrian took me to this place in Napa once? It was similar, but the food was actually good. And the service? Way better." My stomach dropped a little. Adrian, her ex. It wasn't the first time she'd brought him up, but usually it was in passing or as a joke. Not like this. Not comparing him to our anniversary dinner while we were still in the middle of it. I didn't react at first. I just sipped my water and watched the candle flicker between us. She didn't seem to notice. She was too busy checking her lipstick with the front-facing camera. I wanted to ask why she was even there. Why she agreed to come if she didn't want to be. But I didn't. Not yet. Because something about her tone, the way she said, "This will do for now," after mentioning her ex, that made something in me go still. Not angry, not sad, just still. Like a pause button had been pressed on whatever I'd been holding on to for the last 2 years. At first, I thought I was just overthinking it. The more I sat there, the more I realized something had shifted, not just between Dana and me, but in me. This wasn't just a bad date or a bad mood. Something deeper was starting to come into focus. I didn't want to admit it, but it was like the curtain was being pulled back, and I was finally seeing her for who she was. She'd been subtly disrespecting me the entire evening, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. From her dismissive comments about my career to how she talked about her ex, Adrian, with that air of superiority, it was all too much. I felt like I'd been holding on to this version of her that didn't really exist. Or maybe it did, but it was the version I wanted to see, not the one that had been hiding just beneath the surface. She'd been using me as a backup plan. That was the thought that kept running through my mind. This will do for now. It wasn't just about the dinner, or the food, or even the comparison to her ex. It was that entire attitude of settling. Dana wasn't here for me. She was here because I was convenient, someone who could offer her a few nice things and a comfortable life. And that realization? That burned. I told myself I wouldn't let this slide. Not this time. I wasn't the type to cause drama or stir the pot, but there was a quiet rage building inside me. It was a slow burn, simmering beneath the surface, and the more I thought about it, the more I felt that familiar urge to take control of the situation. And I realized I was going to get back at her. Not in some wild, impulsive way. No, I'd been with her long enough to know how to make this hurt. Not with anger, but with something far more satisfying patience. I would wait for the perfect moment, and when it came, I'd strike. The dinner had ended in the most awkward way possible. She kept talking as if nothing was wrong, still scrolling through her phone, making small talk with the waiter, but I had already checked out. I didn't say anything. I didn't try to salvage it. I just quietly asked for the check, left a tip that I felt was generous given the circumstances, and walked out without a word. I could hear her heels clicking behind me as she rushed to catch up. What, Sam? Are you serious? You just leave without even explaining. I didn't turn around. You'll figure it out, I said, my voice calm, too calm. She didn't respond, but I could feel her eyes on my back. The anger in her voice wasn't about the dinner. It was about the fact that I was walking away. And for the first time, I didn't care. Once I got home, I sat in my apartment for a while, staring at my phone. Dana's messages started coming through. At first, it was just a few, casual. Why are you ignoring me? And this is ridiculous. We need to talk. But then, they started getting more frantic. I don't get what your problem is. You're being dramatic. Followed by a string of text after text. The last one, I don't know why I even bother with you. It's not like you can ever give me what I really want. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. She had just given me everything I needed to know. That last text? That was my moment. I didn't reply, of course. That's the first part of my revenge, silence. Dana was used to being in control of situations. She was used to being the one to call the shots, to get the last word. But not this time. I was taking the power back. The next day, I started thinking about how I could really get back at her. I wasn't going to go straight for the obvious route, screaming matches or petty insults. No, I needed something subtler, something that would make her realize the consequences of her actions in a way she couldn't ignore. I remembered the little things she'd said over the course of our relationship. The way she'd mock my job, as if being a freelance designer was something less than. The way she'd praise her ex, Adrian, while throwing little jabs at me for not being him. I could already see the cracks, the holes in her carefully curated world. It was a delicate house of cards, and if I moved the right pieces around, it would all come crashing down. Here's where things started to get interesting. Dana had always prided herself on being a planner. She liked to be in control of everything, especially her future. She would talk about how she was saving for a house, how she wanted to travel the world, how she dreamed of starting her own marketing firm. All of it was about building this image of the perfect life, the perfect partner, the perfect everything. I knew exactly how to use this against her. I waited a few days. Her texts became less frequent, more desperate. I could tell she was confused, trying to piece together what went wrong. But I didn't let up. I kept the silence, letting her stew in it. Then, after a week, I texted her. Just one sentence. I think it's time we talked about what we want from each other. She was quick to respond, but this time, there was no more anger. She was conciliatory, almost pleading. I could feel her trying to walk back her earlier words, trying to make it sound like nothing had happened. But I wasn't interested in patching things up. Not yet. I needed to make sure she knew what she'd lost. A few days later, I met with her in person. We sat down at a coffee shop, and she started in on the usual. How I'd overreacted, how she didn't mean it, how she was just having a bad night. I let her talk, her words spilling out as she tried to smooth things over. I just nodded. Then, when she finished, I hit her with the truth. I've been thinking a lot about what you said that night, I said, and about everything you've been doing lately, about how you act when things don't go your way. You know, when you start comparing me to your ex. She froze. I could see her trying to hide the nervousness behind her eyes, but I wasn't letting her off the hook this time. I'm not your backup plan, Dana, I continued, and I'm not here to play second fiddle to your perfect image of yourself. If you think I'm not good enough for you, then maybe it's time we go our separate ways. Her face paled. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out at first. The shock on her face was enough to confirm what I'd suspected. She'd never once thought I might actually walk away from her. Her eyes darted around, scanning the cafe like she was trying to figure out her next move. I didn't mean she started, her voice unsteady. I wasn't, I cut her off. You don't need to explain yourself. It's clear what this relationship is to you. You've been stringing me along, keeping me around because it's easy. You've got your backup plan in place with your ex, and I'm just a placeholder. She opened her mouth again, but the words were slow, like she was trying to piece something together. That's not true. Her voice faltered, and she looked down at her coffee cup, twisting it in her hands. I leaned back in my chair, letting her flounder. I didn't care about her excuses anymore. I didn't care about the woman who sat across from me, clutching at her coffee cup, trying to hold onto some semblance of control. This wasn't the person I'd fallen for. This wasn't the person I wanted in my life anymore. You think I don't see it, Dana? I said quietly, but my voice was firm. I'm not stupid. I know how this works. You've got your shiny new dream, and you've been trying to fit me into it. But guess what? I don't fit. And I'm not going to keep bending myself into a shape that works for you. It's over. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Her face, which had been flushed with indignation a moment ago, slowly drained of color. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She couldn't argue this time. For a long moment, there was silence. She was visibly shaken, her earlier confidence slipping away, and I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. It felt like I was finally standing up for myself, finally asserting that I wasn't going to be her second choice anymore. I never thought you'd be this cruel, Sam, she finally said, her voice small now, almost pleading. I shook my head. You don't get to turn this around on me. I'm not the one who's been cruel. I've been patient. I've put up with a lot, but that's over now. She looked away, I scanning the table like she was trying to find something to focus on, anything to distract her from the reality of what was happening. And then, just like that, the desperation started to creep in. I can see it in the way she shifted in her seat, the way her hands fidgeted with her phone, the way her lips trembled ever so slightly. She was losing control. And that's when I knew this was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I don't know what you want me to say, Sam, she said, the edge of irritation returning. You're acting like I've done something terrible, but this is just how things are sometimes. People change. I change. We grow apart. I could feel the anger rising in me again, but I stayed calm. Calm was the key now. I was in control. No, Dana, you don't get to blame me for this. You didn't want to put in the effort. You didn't want to work through the stuff that matters. You just wanted to keep me around as long as it was convenient for you, and I'm done with that. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back. Fine. Whatever, Sam. If you're going to be like this, then there's nothing left to say. I stood up too, slowly, deliberately. You're right. There's nothing left to say. But you'll remember this. You'll remember how you treated me. And you'll remember how, when you decided to push me aside for your perfect life, I was the one who walked away. Her face twisted with frustration, and she took a few steps back. You're an idiot, she muttered, clearly fighting the urge to scream. This is ridiculous. I can't believe I wasted my time with you. I smiled. I'm glad you feel that way. You'll get over it. You always do. She turned and stormed out of the cafe, leaving the air thick with tension. I didn't move for a few moments. Part of me wanted to watch her go, to see her finally realize she'd lost the control she had over me. But I resisted. I didn't need to see it. I already knew. I paid for the coffee, grabbed my things, and left the cafe. As I walked to my car, I felt strangely light, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. The thing about Dana was that she had always thought she could play with me, that she could push me around, make me feel like I was just a side character in her life's drama. She never took me seriously because she always had something better lined up. She thought I would just roll over and take it. But not this time. As I started my car and pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Another text from her. I wasn't even curious anymore. I didn't need to read it. I'd seen the pattern. She was trying to reel me back in. But I wasn't going to fall for it again. I had a plan now. This wasn't just about ending things with Dana. It was about making sure she understood what losing me really meant. It was about showing her the consequences of thinking she could just use me and toss me aside when I didn't fit into her perfect little picture anymore. I didn't reply to Dana's text that night, or the next day, and the next week, when I ran into her at a mutual friend's party. She tried to approach me with that same smile, pretending like everything was fine, but I didn't fall for it. I wasn't the same person I had been just a few months ago, the one who always apologized first or tried to patch things up just to avoid conflict. I was done. That night, I took a step back and really thought about the kind of person I wanted to be moving forward. Dana had shown me exactly what she was capable of, manipulating the situation, making everything about her, and using people as stepping stones. That was the part that hit me hardest. She was so focused on her own plans that she never even bothered to see me as a person in her life, only as a tool to fit into her picture. But I wasn't going to let her have the last word this time. About a week later, I reached out to her, not because I missed her, not because I wanted to fix things, but because I needed closure. I sent her one simple message. I hope you find what you're looking for, but I won't be around when you realize it wasn't what you thought. She read it quickly, then left me on read for hours. Part of me almost expected her to reply with something defensive or manipulative, but she didn't. For the first time, there was no guilt trip, no emotional manipulation. It felt like I'd said my piece, and she knew there was no coming back. A few days passed. I saw her out with some friends. She didn't make eye contact with me. There was no attempt to call me over or even make a scene. It was like I had disappeared from her world, and honestly, it felt good. It was the final proof that she hadn't really cared about me, not in the way I needed, not in the way I deserved. Then, things shifted. Dana started posting pictures online, showcasing her perfect life, new trips, new friends, new experiences, always with that same bright smile, that same curated image. But it was all too perfect. The cracks started to show. She started comparing every new guy she was dating to her ex, Adrian, and every caption sounded like a desperate attempt to prove that she was fine, that she hadn't been affected by our breakup. I kept living my life, quietly and without drama. I focused on my work, reconnected with friends I'd neglected while in that relationship, and spent more time doing things I enjoyed, things that made me feel like I was building a future that actually mattered to me. Dana's posts came and went, and I couldn't help but feel that subtle sense of satisfaction. She had been the one who'd broken things off with Adrian before, convinced that she could do better. But in the end, she was just lost in her own perfect, fragile world, alone. As for me, I was better off. It was the first time in a long while I felt like I could breathe again, like I wasn't trying to fit into someone else's life. Months later, Dana did reach out again, but it wasn't like before. This time, there was no anger, no desperation, just a cold, simple message asking if we could meet up for coffee to talk. I could sense the desperation beneath the surface, but I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I had gotten my revenge, not in any grand, dramatic gesture, but in how I chose to live my life after everything. By taking control of my own happiness and refusing to let her back into it.